Yo, what's good with the YouTube? It's your boy Rojo. This is the Rojo Room, man. Today we're gonna talk about two dudes, big homies from Northern California, that paroled from the feds back in like 2010. They instantly went and started handling some serious business, man. And you guys are probably familiar with this case, but we'll talk about it a little bit anyway. This is from CBS San Francisco. Four members of the NF prison gang were sentenced Wednesday to lengthy terms in state prison for their roles in a racketeering conspiracy that involved several murders, drug trafficking, and firearms offenses, prosecutors said. The U.S. Attorney's Office said the gang members were sentenced in U.S. District Court in Oakland, where 60-year-old Andrew Cervantes of Stockton, who is said to be the gang's top leader and is known as Mad Dog, 52-year-old Henry Cervantes of Lodi, who is known as Happy, 48-year-old Alberto Lourdes of Salinas, known as Bird, and 33-year-old Jaime Cervantes of San Mateo, known as Hennessy. Today's hearing concluded a 6-year investigation that was conducted by the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office with the help of local justice departments, including Santa Clara District Attorney, Oakland Police, San Jose Police, Livermore, and Alameda Sheriffs. Judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers sentenced Andrew Cervantes to 36 years, Henry Cervantes to 75, Lourdes to life in prison plus 10, and Jaime Cervantes to 32 years. Two of the charges stem from the deaths of John Gilbert Navarrete, 73, and 56-year-old Renee Washington, whose bodies were found when firefighters responded to a blaze at a two-story building in the 3100 block of Coolidge Avenue in Oakland at 1 a.m. on September 11th. Navarrete and Washington were found inside a residential unit on the second floor. Their bodies were so disfigured that authorities were initially unable to identify them. An autopsy later revealed that Navarrete and Washington suffered multiple stab wounds, and authorities said they believed the fire was set to cover up the crime. Navarrete was a heroin addict who had been convicted of second-degree murder in Alameda County Superior Court back in May of 1981 for fatally shooting Neil Wesley in the vicinity of 23rd Avenue East 12th in Oakland and supporting his heroin habits, according to court records. Prosecutors said another of the group's crimes occurred in August of 12 when Lourdes and two other gang members traveled to San Jose, lured another gang member who was suspecting of cooperating with law enforcement to a meeting where he was shot to death while he was sitting in his vehicle. Prosecutors said all four gang members were convicted of racketeering conspiracy and other offenses during a 3-month trial that concluded in August. In addition, Lourdes was convicted of murder in the aid of racketeering, use of a firearm in furtherance of a crime of violence, and use of a firearm in furtherance of a crime of violence causing death. Jaime Cervantes and Lourdes were convicted of conspiracy to commit murder in aid of racketeering and conspiracy to commit assault with a dangerous weapon in aid of racketeering. Man, all these racketeerings, those are all enhancements, man. Henry Cervantes and Jaime Cervantes were also convicted of using fire to commit a felony, conspiracy to obstruct justice and obstruction of justice, and Henry and Andrew Cervantes and Lourdes were convicted of conspiracy to distribute controlled substances. Prosecutor says the evidence in the case indicates that the Nuestra Familia is a prison gang that originally formed in the California State Prison in the 60s. Nuestra Familia leaders control and direct the gang's criminal activities both inside and outside the prison system. Prosecutor says the evidence also demonstrated that the four defendants were members or associates of the federal branch of the Nuestra Familia, which was controlled by two principal overseers in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. They allege that Andrew Cervantes was one of those overseers of the gang while serving a 210-month federal prison sentence, and that Lourdes and Happy Cervantes were senior gang members who reported to him. Federal prosecutors said from the fall of 2010 through March of 13, members and associates of the Nuestra Familia engaged in trafficking of methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, and committing robberies to raise money for themselves and the gang. 8 co-defendants in the case previously pled guilty to racketeering, conspiracy, and other offenses. The sentences reflect the egregious conduct of the defendants who lured and intimidated younger members of the community into being the next generation of gang members ready to accept a life of crime, drugs, and violence. Well, man, that I remember when them guys were about due to get out, and I was curious to myself. I'm like, with this stuff that's going on back and forth between Pelican Bay and Florence, Colorado, or the feds and the state, however you want to look at it, are these individuals going to try to maintain a low profile? Are they going to come out there and try to set an example? And to me, it's hard to say. You know what I mean? They came out there and conducted themselves and did the things that they were, accustomed to doing. They were out there shaking and moving and doing what, that group's done since the 60s. I don't know if it was anything different. I don't know any kind of things, man. I don't know. I just don't see how any of the federal state beef, had consequences that were, included in this indictment at all. It seems like there were some targets. The targets were eliminated, and that was that. It doesn't seem too overly obvious that it was any kind of state or federal. My bad. I had a bout with the allergies, man. I had to cough a little bit, but the three main guys, the three main characters in the story. You know what I mean? The older gentleman, Happy, Mad Dog. They're with the business. They've been around a long time, and they definitely were on the side of the feds when there was a federal state thing going on. They came out there and they did what they were supposed to do, and tried to generate some income. But you got to understand, a lot of people fail to realize that once you make it to that level that they're at, or even if once you make it to the NF period, they're going to be so far up your behind, and everything you do on the streets, you're like, oh, my PO is not tripping on me. Yeah, but if your PO is not tripping on you, the FBI might be. If the FBI is not, the DEA is. The DEA is not, the Department of Justice is. Homeland Security, you name it. Border Patrol. They think you're, it's like, yeah, your parole officer. When you're in the NF or any of them other organizations, especially the big three, you don't need to worry about your parole officer. He's just there to catch you up on some little violations and send you back. He's the least of your worries, really. It's the guys you don't see that you got to worry about. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of them. There's they're never going to not be another one. Straight up. So, when you involve yourself in a lifestyle, and this is just a story about one particular group, but it doesn't only pertain to them. You got plenty of other groups all across the country, plenty others in California. When you get out of them shoes, when you're known to be somebody of stature, somebody with some influence, authority, high ranking within your organization, your life changes. You're not going to go out on the streets and be successful for decades and also be successful in the eyes of your group. You're only going to be successful one or two ways: successful with how the police want you to conduct yourself, or successful how the group wants you to conduct yourself. They don't mix. One of them will get you prison, one of them will get you dead, whoever's offended. And that's just straight up real talk. Now, them dudes, those are some OGs. They're from the generation before mine. And they came out, they weren't playing, they established, they did what they were supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? But you can't, every year it gets harder with technology and, the resources that's available to the government to bust you. Every year getting away is harder. It's that lifestyle, you got to understand that, jumping into that comes with the risk. Local PDs. Hey, back in my early time, I could do whatever I wanted. There wasn't no cameras. There wasn't no this. Unless I got caught in the act, I came up. Man, nowadays, touch DNA, cameras, GPS, phones recording everywhere you go. Oh, tell us about your experience at McDonald's. Oh, well, I thought I turned my location off. I want to buy a pair of boots. For the next week, you're going to see all kinds of boot advertisements. The lifestyle's not what it used to be, man. It's going to be rough, and it's going to get rougher and rougher and rougher. You know, and things are going to 240 months, you know, life plus 10 years, 50 years in the feds. Is it worth it? Got to ask yourself that. You know what I mean? Try to be all you could be. I tried to be all I could be. But, you know, at the end of the day, in retrospect, man, I could make $1 million and buy a fat ass house. The next month, I'm hitting with a conspiracy to distribute a controlled substance to benefit a criminal organization, and I'm looking at 50 years. And you know, if you strike out in business, like legitimate business, you know, let's say you're a concert promoter, man, you might have to go to an apartment, you know, when the money stops flowing. In this game, you got to go somewhere else. That's all. Just a little advice from your boy Rojo. This is the Rojo Room, man. You guys have a good day. I'll holler at y'all later.